Figure it out yourself. Those words still echo in my mind as I remember standing in that dusty parking lot outside a gas station in Bakersfield, California, watching my husband Jake speed away with his two brothers laughing in the back seat, 300 miles from our home in Phoenix, Arizona, with nothing but the desert wind and my disbelief for company. I'm Sarah Chen, 32 years old, and I worked as a project manager at a sustainable energy consulting firm. Jake and I had been married for 7 years. And this road trip was supposed to be our chance to attend his cousin's wedding in San Francisco, just the four of us sharing gas money in his pickup truck. But from the moment we left Phoenix, something felt wrong. Jake kept exchanging these knowing looks with his brothers, Marcus and Tyler, in the rearview mirror, followed by hushed conversations I couldn't quite make out. Every time I asked what was going on, Jake would flash that charming smile and say, "Nothing, babe, just catching up with the guys." I should have listened to that voice in my head telling me something was off. About an hour before we were supposed to reach our next stop, we pulled into this isolated gas station. I went inside to grab some snacks and use the restroom. When I came back out, they were already in the truck with the engine running. I approached the passenger door, ready to continue our journey. "Ready to hit the road?" I called out. Jake leaned out the driver's window with this smug expression I'd never seen before. "Actually," he said, "we've been discussing something. We think it's time you learned to be more independent." "What are you talking about?" I asked, confusion washing over me. Marcus leaned forward from the back seat, that trademark grin spreading across his face. "You're always so attached to Jake. This will be good for you. Think of it as a character-building exercise." I stood there stunned, clutching my purse while my car sat parked back in Phoenix. "This isn't funny," I said firmly. "Whatever game this is, it ends now." Jake's smirk grew wider. "It's not a game, Sarah. It's a reality check. You need to learn to handle things without always depending on me." Then, with a sharp rev of the engine, he shouted those words that would change everything. "Figure it out yourself." The truck sped away, leaving me standing there as their laughter disappeared into the California heat. The desert breeze cut through my jacket, and I could smell rain approaching in the distance. I tried calling Jake straight to voicemail. Tried Marcus, no answer. Tyler had blocked my number months earlier after some petty argument I couldn't even recall. That's when reality hit me. This wasn't some silly prank they'd reverse in an hour. This was calculated. Inside the gas station, I asked the clerk about public transportation to Phoenix. "Sorry, miss," he said with sympathy. "No buses run through here. Closest station is in Bakersfield proper, about 40 miles east." I'd met Jake 9 years earlier at a community art festival in Phoenix. He was charismatic, witty, and made me feel like I was the most fascinating person he'd ever encountered. His brothers, however, were a completely different story. From our very first meeting, they treated me like an intruder who was stealing Jake away from their tight-knit circle. Family barbecues where they shared inside jokes I couldn't understand. Weekend trips where they forgot to include me in the planning. "They're just protective," Jake would always explain. "Give them time to warm up." But they never did. If anything, their hostility intensified after our wedding. Marcus would make snide comments about how I kept Jake on a leash and prevented him from being spontaneous. Tyler would roll his eyes whenever I offered suggestions, like I was overstepping invisible boundaries. Looking back, there were red flags even before we left Phoenix for this trip. They insisted we take Jake's truck instead of my more reliable sedan. Jake made all the hotel reservations under his name only. Marcus kept making jokes about how I never did anything adventurous. At the time, I dismissed it as typical brother banter. But standing stranded in that parking lot, I realized, this wasn't about adventure. It was about power. I took a deep breath, fighting back panic. I had my phone, wallet, and about $140 in cash. Not nearly enough for a taxi all the way to Phoenix, but maybe enough to get me started. The gas station clerk kindly let me use their landline to call a cab company in Bakersfield. The driver quoted me $85 just to reach the bus station. Expensive, but I had no choice. The ride was quiet except for soft rock playing on the driver's radio. I stared out at the passing landscape, wondering how my marriage had deteriorated to this point. The Greyhound journey to Phoenix took nearly 18 hours, winding through small desert towns with countless stops. I kept checking my phone, half expecting Jake to call with an apology or at least to check if I was okay. Silence. Somewhere between Flagstaff and Phoenix, the truth crystallized. This wasn't about teaching me independence. It was about establishing my position in their brotherhood, and that position was clearly at the bottom. I reflected on all the times I'd compromised to maintain peace. When the bus arrived in Phoenix the next morning, I took a cab home, foolishly hoping Jake's truck might be in our driveway. But it wasn't. The house stood exactly as we'd left it on Friday morning, empty and eerily quiet. I sat at our kitchen table, staring at the wall where our wedding photo hung. Then something inside me shifted. I went upstairs and began examining Jake's belongings, not out of suspicion, but because I needed to understand the man I'd married. His phone was locked, but his laptop sat open on our desk. And just as I suspected, he hadn't closed his browser tabs. There it was, a group chat between Jake and his brothers, spanning several months. Screenshots of my text messages to him with Marcus responding, "Dude, she's so clingy." Tyler adding crying laughing emojis. Photos of me napping on our couch with captions like, "Dreaming of new ways to control me tomorrow." And then the thread, about our trip. Marcus, "We should abandon her somewhere and see how she handles it." Tyler, "Yeah. She relies on Jake for everything." "Y'all are crazy, but it would be hilarious," Jake had replied. They'd planned everything. The gas station stop, the fake independence speech, even blocking my calls afterward. I closed the laptop and sat in the silence, the hum of our air conditioner the only sound. Then I grabbed a suitcase, packed my essentials, and walked out that door without a backward glance. I wasn't coming home. I drove straight to my younger brother David's apartment in Scottsdale. He worked nights as a software developer and had a guest room he used as an office. When he opened the door and saw the suitcase in my hand, he didn't need explanations. He simply stepped aside and said, "Stay as long as you need." David had never particularly liked Jake. He'd been polite at family gatherings, but I could always sense his reservations. Over Chinese takeout that evening, I shared everything, the prank, the group messages, the months of mockery behind my back. He shook his head slowly. "Sarah, they've been trying to break you down for years. I just never thought Jake would cross this line." By Monday morning, my decision was final. I called my supervisor at Green Tech Solutions and inquired about transferring to our satellite office in Tucson. We had a major renewable energy project there and needed experienced project managers. She didn't hesitate. "If you can start next week, the position is yours." Tuesday afternoon, my phone began ringing. "Jake." I let it go to voicemail. His message was brief and telling. "Sarah, where are you? I came home and you're gone. Call me back. We need to discuss this." No apology. No acknowledgement of his actions. Just irritation that I dared to leave. I blocked his number. Within an hour, Marcus called from a different line. I blocked that too. Then Tyler. They began using unknown numbers, leaving messages about how I was overreacting and destroying the family over a simple joke. By Thursday, David came home from work with an expression I'll never forget. "He's here," he announced. Jake's parked outside. I peered through the blinds. There was his blue pickup across the street. When he spotted me at the window, he climbed out and started walking toward the building. I intercepted him in the hallway before he could knock on David's door. "Sarah, thank goodness," he said, reaching toward me. "I've been worried sick." I stepped away. "What do you want?" "Jake, I want you to come home so we can resolve this like mature adults." "Resolve what?" "How you abandoned me 300 miles from home, how you and your brothers planned it for months." His expression shifted, the fake concern slipping just enough to reveal his underlying irritation. "It was a prank. Sarah, you're acting like I committed some terrible crime. You left me stranded, Jake. You laughed about it. You planned it, for months because ... because you needed it." He interrupted. "You're so dependent on me. We thought if you had to solve something independently, maybe you'd relax and stop acting like everything's a crisis." I stared at him for a long moment, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. "I'm not coming home," I said quietly. His jaw clenched. "Don't be ridiculous. You can't just abandon our marriage because your feelings got hurt. Watch me." I turned and walked back toward David's door. He followed, launching into excuses, half-hearted apologies, and even subtle threats, but his words meant nothing. When I closed the door in his face, I knew I was finished listening forever. 2 weeks later, I sat across from Patricia Williams, a family attorney recommended by David's colleague. She listened intently as I recounted everything from the gas station in Bakersfield to the group chat on Jake's laptop. When I finished, Patricia leaned back thoughtfully. Do you have evidence of these messages? Yes. Screenshots from his laptop and recordings of the voicemails from him and his brothers. Her eyebrows raised approvingly. That's excellent. Arizona has no fault. Divorce laws, but evidence of harassment and planned emotional abuse can influence asset division and protective orders. That afternoon, I signed the paperwork to initiate divorce proceedings. From then on, I followed Patricia's guidance completely. No calls, no texts, no responses if Jake appeared. If he attempted contact through others, I documented everything. 3 weeks later, Patricia called me in with exciting news. We've discovered something significant, she said with a satisfied smile. She spread a collection of printed photos across her desk. There was Jake with his brothers on the very night they'd abandoned me in Bakersfield, celebrating at some trendy bar in Los Angeles with captions like, "Brothers Night Out, No Wives Allowed, and Freedom Never Tasted So Good." The timestamps matched exactly with the evening I was desperately trying to find transportation home. "They've been telling mutual friends that you were emotionally unstable and that Jake needed to escape from you," Patricia explained. "These photos and your documented messages completely destroy their narrative." Mixed with the photos were additional screenshots from the group chat. Not just the ones I'd seen, but dozens more. Patricia's investigator had accessed Jake's poorly secured cloud storage. There were months of cruel jokes mocking my habits, bets on how long I'd survive without them, even speculation about what I'd probably say when I called for help. The hearing was scheduled for early March. I entered the courthouse wearing my most professional black suit, my heart pounding but my resolve unwavering. Jake sat across the room with his attorney, an imposing man in an expensive suit, who looked like he specialized in intimidation. Jake had lost weight but still managed that familiar half-smile like nothing had changed. His lawyer opened with a predictable narrative. I was an overly sensitive wife who'd overreacted to harmless family bonding, abandoned our home without warning, and refused marriage counseling. Patricia didn't need to raise her voice during our turn. The evidence spoke for itself. One by one, she presented the judge with the printed photos, chat transcripts, and documented harassment after I'd clearly requested no contact. This was not harmless family bonding, Patricia stated calmly. This was a premeditated act of humiliation, designed to mock and emotionally wound my client, followed by weeks of documented harassment. The courtroom fell silent except for rustling pages as the judge reviewed our evidence. I avoided looking at Jake, but I could sense his intense stare. When the judge finally spoke, his tone was measured but decisive. Divorce granted. Assets, to be divided equally. No spousal support awarded to either party. No evidence of abandonment or instability on the petitioner's part. Patricia leaned over and whispered, "It's finished." As I exited the courthouse, Jake attempted to follow, but Patricia intercepted him. "The restraining order remains active," she reminded him firmly. I continued walking without looking back. 1 year after that gas station in Bakersfield, my life was completely transformed, and I mean that in the most positive way imaginable. The promotion I'd secured at Green Tech Solutions in Tucson provided steady income and flexible scheduling. Eventually, I left to launch my own environmental consulting firm, specializing in sustainability assessments for small businesses. It began with 2 referrals from my former company, then expanded entirely through client recommendations. I purchased a charming Adobe-style house on Tucson's east side. Mine completely, every piece of furniture, every design choice was my own decision. I didn't need to negotiate over meal plans or weekend activities. I discovered a love for my own company that I never knew existed. Jake, meanwhile, wasn't thriving. I wasn't seeking updates, but information has a way of circulating. A mutual acquaintance mentioned he'd married a coworker just 10 months after our divorce, and that relationship collapsed within a year. His professional reputation suffered after those bar photos from the prank went viral on social media, making him appear petty and cruel. His brothers faced consequences too. Marcus was terminated from his position at a shipping company after HR discovered the harassment in their group chat. Tyler's freelance photography business crumbled when mutual contacts stopped trusting him. There was a certain justice to it all. One afternoon while shopping for supplies at the hardware store, I encountered David's friend Marcus, a different Marcus who'd quietly supported me during the divorce. "Did you hear about Jake?" he asked with raised eyebrows. "No," I replied. Honestly, I genuinely hadn't thought about him in months. Let's just say karma's been busy. His most recent girlfriend left him after finding those old messages from prank night. Apparently, she didn't find it so amusing either. I simply smiled and continued shopping. I didn't need the details. What mattered was knowing I was free, and that those who tried to destroy me had to live with the chaos they'd created. Some wounds leave scars, but they also forge strength, wisdom, and a refusal to accept less than you deserve. That gas station in California could have been where I lost myself entirely. Instead, it became the launching point for building a life that was authentically mine, and I have never, not once, looked back. Sometimes the people you trust most teach you life's hardest lessons, not through love, but by revealing exactly how little you mean to them. And sometimes walking away isn't an ending. It's the beginning of the life you were always meant to live. If this story resonates with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to distance yourself from someone who treated hurting you like entertainment? I'd love to hear your experiences. Let me know your location, and when you're watching this, it's incredible seeing our global community connect. Like this video if you believe respect should never be compromised. Subscribe to never miss our next empowering story. And remember, your peace of mind is worth more than anyone's approval.